Hi, I'm Drew.
And I'm Sam.
And welcome to Drewling Samantics.
And there he is, my little podcast mate, Sam. How are you doing, mate?
I am very well, thank you, Mr. Fettis. How the devil are you?
Very good, thank you. Yeah, I've had a busy and productive week.
Nice.
Mostly sort of in prep for things to happen. Things I can't say too much about yet,
Right.
which will become obvious in the fullness of time, but I will be able to reveal all soon. So if that hasn't got you on tenterhooks, I don't know what will have. But can you reveal anything about your week, mate? How you been doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah, I've had sort of, again, similar thing like prep bits and little meetings and fittings and various other stuff that's all going towards this feature film that I'm doing at the moment. And
Yep.
I have just completed a promotional video, campaign video for the production company, which I think is going live very soon, if it hasn't already. So keep your eyes peeled and keep your ear to the ground and all that, because there might be a video out there talking all about the movie that I am about to film and continue filming, because I've already done a little bit. But yeah, so a nice busy week this end as well. However, I have to say, the most exciting thing of this week, or the thing I've been most excited about, is about to happen now, mate. Because today we have a rather special episode.
Mate, it is our first guest episode of season 6.
It is
it's nice just to sit here still with you and meet our fantastic guest coming up.
Yeah, very, very exciting stuff. And actually, for those eagle-eyed and eagle-eared, if that's a phrase, people out there, this guest isn't completely new to Drewling Samantics. No, so he's made a brief appearance previously. However, today we thought we'd give him a bit more time on the air and really find out what he's all about. So I guess, mate, there's no need to wait any longer, really.
Let's go for it, Sam. Let's meet the wonderful, the very talented Mr. Callum Donnelly.
And there he is. Mr. Callum Donnelly is joining us on Drewling Samantics for the second time, but this time properly. Welcome, mate. How are you?
I'm really good. Thank you so much for having me on, chaps. It's
Absolute
here.
pleasure, mate. Absolute pleasure. Nice to meet you, Callum. And can I just say, you have the honour of being the first guest of season 6 of Drewling Samantics. So
thank you very much. What an honour.
Yeah, well, it can only get better from here. So anyway, that wonderful intro.
Thanks, mate.
No, you know I love you, mate. It's wonderful to have you on. As I mentioned, you have been on the podcast before on our Christmas special. But this time we're giving you the airwaves properly and allowing you to talk about things that aren't just panto, although I'm sure it will come up. So for people who perhaps didn't get the opportunity to see you in that episode, can you please give everyone a bit of a brief description about who you are and what you do?
Yes, no problem. So hello, everyone. Thanks for having me on again. So my name is Callum Donnelly. So I've got kind of 3 aspects of what I do as a job. I've kind of got the performer side of things. So I kind of specialize in comedy performance, obviously panto comic being one of those. And then also do a lot of community projects with drama through various theatres, going into schools, that kind of thing. And then also have a events company as well. So that's kind of the 3 aspects of what I do.
So you're a triple threat then, are you?
yeah, but absolutely not in the traditional sense of in any way, shape or form.
So panto, let's say that's where you and Sam first worked. East Grinstead. Sorry, I should know. What was the panto again?
It was Jack and the Beanstalk.
Jack and the Beanstalk. Sorry, and I would imagine comedian in that was.
Yeah, so I was Billy. So essentially, I just do the same part every year with a different costume. So East Grinstead, I've been there. That was my 5th year there in a row. So yeah, 6th year.
Fantastic.
Yeah, which is great. It's such a lovely theatre. I think I spoke about it briefly on the.
You did.
Last time I was on, but it's called Check Me Theatre, and it's kind of it's a small theatre, but it feels like a big theatre. You know, it's got 340 seats, but it's got a circle. And what I love about it is you can, as a comic, I can really see the whites of people's eyes. And, you know, some of these big shows, these big pantos, someone will say something in the audience and it will just be ignored. Whereas if someone says something in the audience, I'll be like, what?
Oh, yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Say again. Yeah. So that's why I love it. It's great.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I mean, I've done panto last year. I was at Potter's Bar, and it's that those lovely intimate theatres. I think it's like you say, someone will shout something out, and it takes a week to get to the stage. By which time the moment's gone. But like you say, you can. I was playing Dame, and you can be straight on those. You know, I think the intimacy of smaller theatres really helps panto. I don't know about yourself, but you know, even playing villain, you can get right in their faces as well. So, you know, which of course, you know, Sam knows far too much about playing villain. Miserable bugger.
He does it so well, though.
Does
training for it all his life.
All his life, and playing the part.
I feel I'm being ganged up on here, and I'm not entirely sure how that's happened so early. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move straight on to another question. So to shut you up on being mean to me. Anyway, your background in comedy, and as I said, trained in comedy. So I believe your degree was in comedic acting or acting in general, but then you specialised and did a master's in comedy. Is that right?
Yeah, so University of Kent, where I studied, was a really unique course. So it was a drama course, drama and theatre studies. And the first 3 years, you kind of got your BA in drama. And then it used to be the case, it's not anymore, but the fourth year was like a specialism year. So kind of the equivalent of a year in industry that you might do if you were doing like engineering or something, where you got to specialise in an aspect of theatre and do it professionally, but with the kind of backup of being at university. So you could do contemporary acting, you could do directing, producing, but you could also do stand-up comedy. So I had already at that point formed a comedy trio with two of my friends in second year. So the university were great and said, look, guys, would you like to do this stand-up course, but do it as a trio as well as kind of do so. So part of that course, have out and do a certain amount of open mic gigs, literally, you know, basements in London and absolutely die flat on our face. But we always had the chance to then after that go back to campus and sit with the other guys studying it and go, I had this terrible gig. And you go, yeah, okay, me too. And then you could discuss it. And that's what makes it better. Some of them were good. Sometimes I did well.
No, never remember the good ones. Yeah. So you say you work with in a trio, and obviously you work solo. Is there one you prefer? Do they differ, or is it just they're so different they're both rewarding? How?
It's interesting because from that year in particular, kind of doing both, so sort of performing as a trio, doing kind of full-length theatre shows, doing 20-minute sets as a trio, and then also doing solo stand-up, I kind of realised that my real passion and what I enjoy is comedy that's as part of a group. So again, like that's why I love doing panto, because I love kind of working alongside someone. So whether that's Sam being a baddie or if it's a dame, you know, I think that's a real talent that I have, is I'm quite a good wingman in terms of comedy. Like I'm quite happy for someone else to, if they're really going off on one and they're, you know, they're doing really well, I'm very good at kind of supporting that. So, and when I did stand up, I often felt, for me, sort of at the time when I was doing it, I was very much a kind of just a white middle class young guy, and the stand-up circuit is so saturated with people like that. And I would come off stage and I'd have made people laugh and it was funny, but they weren't going away remembering me. They would remember someone else off the bill because I wasn't really saying anything. I didn't really feel like I had anything to say. So when I do stand up now, it's character based. So I will be, and I usually do it for families now, whether it's dressed as a zombie or a clown, something stupid, you know, because I prefer having that kind of, that barrier between me and the audience in a way. Like it also allows you to play around a bit more, I think, if you've got a character, because you've kind of, the character that I am. So when I'm this zombie character doing stand-up, I can be a lot naughtier and a lot meaner to kids, for example, than Callum Kid, you know what I mean?
And that's the whole purpose, being mean to the kids. I know what you're saying. I mean, I've developed a character I'm working on at the moment and got a couple of shows called Vauxhall Victor, and it's a way, there is that barrier, but also it opens up a lot more as well, because it isn't you. So you don't have to justify why you're saying it. You just have to make the character work. Yeah. And then from out of that. So that's very interesting you say that. I mean, and of course you can get away with so much, like when you're the comic in Panto, the villain, the Dame, you've got that mask on that speaks for you, if you like, rather than, yourself. Do you do a lot of writing at all, Callum?
Yeah, so I'm involved a little bit in writing of the Panto. So how it's worked in previous years is kind of, it'll be the script will be purchased from someone, then it will be ripped apart by someone, then it'll be sent to me to kind of add my stuff in. I wrote a show a couple of years ago, which was performed, which you got some Arts Council funding for, which was kind of pre-pandemic. I'm hoping, I've got a new producer involved in that, which I'm hoping is going to go out on tour probably end of next May. If we can get the funding. So, and that's very much, it's kind of a show based around a wedding, and it's a farce basically. So essentially we wanted it to be performed kind of in churches, because the first thing that happened is the groom comes out to this audience, he says in inverted commas, and says, "Oh, hey guys, you're all here for my wedding, but I don't know any of you. You must be my wife's family." And then it becomes apparent that the audience are there as an audience, not as the guests. They're like, "No, we're here to see a play." And then eventually he has to hide that from his wife, and they have to become part of the wedding. So like when we did it last time, we had a bloke walking the bride down the aisle, someone else doing the best man speech just from the audience. So I'm looking forward to getting that one.
That's great.
Really, really sort of unique area to be in as well, because it sort of combines that immersive with live stand-up and live comedy. So yeah, really. And I mean, it sort of leads on talking about doing those unique things and creating new stuff, and the fact that obviously Panto is very heavily children based, and a lot of your previous comedy with the trio it's been kids based. You also sort of do a lot of teaching and workshops and that side of thing as well. So how did that kind of come about?
Yeah, so I guess you guys have talked about before, like muggle jobs and the idea of having a job that kind of keeps you going. And I was quite lucky in that the theatre near me, so the Marlowe Theatre in Canterbury, was, we're looking for some people to be, I think they call us creative practitioners, to sort of run some workshops for kids. And I got into it that way. And it's sort of, over the last couple of years, it's kind of stopped being that muggle job and something I do to allow myself to do other things and become actually what I really enjoy doing. And I love it. And I think that's something I want to do moving forward, is a lot more of sort of directing youth shows and that kind of thing, because it's so rewarding if you get the right group of, not even necessarily kids, like I've done adult stuff as well, and if you get the right group of a community, right cross section of community, and you get a good project, it's so rewarding. So it now feels like that's something I do alongside performing, whether it used to be, that's something I do to allow myself to perform.
And it leads nicely into talking about a huge project you've just been a part of, which was for the Royal Shakespeare Company.
Yeah, so Shakespeare Nation, it was incredible participatory project. So the RSC do a lot, because obviously they have so much money, and they have associate theatres, and the Marlowe Theatre is an associate theatre. So their kind of plan was, they were doing Henry IV. No, they weren't. Henry VI. They're doing Henry VI Part 1 and 2. The idea was to get there's like a scene in Part 2 which has a bunch of just local people in it, and it's usually cut. Like, they usually just don't do it when they perform the play. But the RSC were like, well, why don't we get a group of local people, like a group of 12, so a chorus from each of our associate theatres. There were 6 theatres, 12 local people to perform that scene, to come up to Stratford, perform that scene 4 or 5 times each. And it was a big job, like really huge organizational feat. Like, I was assigned from the Marlowe side of things, so they assigned me as the director for this group of 12 people, but it was just incredible. Like, the group that we had were from such different sort of walks of life and different experiences of theatre. So, we had people from local charities, we had people with learning difficulties, we had people who had previously done professional acting but sort of lost confidence. We had people who'd never done acting before. We had one chap who was only doing it because he wanted to prove to his daughter that acting could be cool because she wanted to give up. And the bond that they formed was just incredible, that we all formed. And then we went up to Stratford, up to the Royal Shakespeare Theatre, and just to watch the 12 of them perform this scene in front of 1,000 people on the Royal Shakespeare Theatre stage, it was just incredible. And we were lucky. So the other theatres did slightly more shows than us, but the Canterbury cohort were the ones that were filmed for the DVD. So that's there now forever. Like, that show is sort of in the annals of the RSC alongside Ian McKellen shows and Benedict Cumberbatch shows. So it's fantastic.
That's great. So have you got any more of those coming up? Any more projects of that ilk?
Yeah, so the RSC and the Marlowe still work quite closely together. So there's a really cool project which I'll be taking on probably start towards the end of this year, which is the Associate Schools programme. So Marlowe's an associate theatre of the RSC, and then us as the Marlowe have associate schools who we work with. And again, funded by the RSC, the idea is that we have 22 schools. They each rehearse a part of a Shakespeare play. So it's going to be As You Like It. And then, so last year they came to the main house at the Marlowe and they put on the show. This year next year it's outdoors. So we're going to an outdoor venue in Faversham, which isn't far from here. So they'll each do a scene. So my job is a director mentor. So the teachers are responsible for directing their scene, but I'll go into the schools kind of on a regular basis just to tie it all together and make it coherent as a full show. So that's really exciting. That's a project I've wanted to be a part of for a while, but just not been able to make it work. So yeah, that's really fun.
That's extraordinary.
Amazing.
Great stuff.
Really
Great.
Cool stuff. So I'm going to completely flip it on its head now, because obviously you mentioned that you're sort of a triple threat with different strings to your bow, and the third one being something quite a bit different, although it's still connected to the performance industry, so to speak. Your involvement in it has got nothing to do with performance, and that's your company where you basically hire out projection for film and performance.
Yeah, so that's my business that I own with my wife. We're called the Roaming Cinema Company, and it was kind of born out of desperation, like during lockdown. So Amy, my wife, works in weddings. I was obviously working in theatre, so obviously neither of us were doing anything. So we were like, well, what kind of combines our skill sets? Her as sort of an event manager and me as a fun merchant. Like what can we combine? She does the work. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Fun merchant.
You know what I mean? But so how can we combine it to something that's really fun? And like something we'd always enjoyed doing is kind of immersive experiences. And with my comedy trio with 3 Half Pints, I'd done a lot of rural touring, which is, sorry if you've talked about it before, but essentially where you take theatre to rural venues, places that don't usually have access to theatre, and village halls and that sort of thing. And I said, well, living in Kent, there's a lot of villages that don't have access to cinema. So we could take cinema to local villages, and it's great. And it's also a great way of getting yourself gigs, because sometimes if it's like a Halloween event, I will just book myself to be an entertainer, which is great.
This has turned into a confessional now. This isn't advertising. Yeah. Right. So you were bored and you needed some work, so you created a company to hire yourself, is what you're saying.
Yeah, so basically share what I do, let people know that I'm, reassuringly expensive.
Oh God.
So you are literally a mobile cinema. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, so we've got 2 or 3 screens that we can do for like events. So we do sort of indoor and outdoor events with those. So we do, like, at the moment we're doing a monthly outdoor event at a local pub. We do one at a local vineyard in an old barn they've got there. And we also do private hire. So we can set up in your back garden with a bespoke 100-inch screen that we've got, which again came about because my friend who used to build all of our sets for theatre, again, wasn't doing anything. So I was like, let's design and build a really cool, unique cinema screen. So again, it was just something to kind of do that's turned into a way to make money, which is great.
It's great. Fantastic.
What about surely there must be a call for that in the sporting world as well. So we're very aware that some rather major sporting events are coming up and have just happened. Is that something that you can sort of use that as an outlet as well? Have you done that so far?
Yeah, we have done. Obviously, one thing people don't necessarily understand is that projectors have to be used in the dark. So it's not necessarily great in the height of summer, but actually a Winter World Cup, as much as it's a travesty for everyone involved, little old me with my travelling projector and screen, I think it's great.
It's your fault again, is it? You've been on to all the Arab Emirates or whoever are organising all this, and you've said, look, there's a business going on here. We can combine somehow.
All those shady deals with those envelopes that were done in FIFA.
Yeah,
it was all me passing them to each other.
Yeah, I need you to con FIFA.
Although
reassuring expensive comic,
it has backfired slightly, because we were actually discussing this the other day, weren't we, Callum? That in Panto it now means you may well end up missing some of the football, which is devastating.
Yeah, we worked out, didn't we, that the World Cup final, which again is assuming a lot that we're going to be interested by that stage. I think we've got shows at, what is it, 1 and 5?
I can't remember.
And the football match starts at 3, doesn't it? So I think we might be able to watch an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So if anyone's going to watch Panto on the day of the World Cup final and England are involved, don't be surprised if some of your performers seem very agitated and seem to be rushing their lines a tad.
Oh my God!
I'm not guaranteeing that, of course, but
if you don't want me to ruin the score for you, don't come.
Yeah,
because I will.
I'm gonna tell you. Yeah.
We'll get halfway through a real sort of we'll have the hero and the heroine on stage having a real intimate moment, and then you'll hear massive cheering from backstage.
Just me and you just run on from stage left and skid across the stage. That actually has. I remember that happened once when I was watching The Producers, not someone skidding on stage, but there's a bit in The Producers where there's an intermission within a song, and they could just kind of improvise that bit. And the guy who was playing Max Bialystock, I think it was the Rugby World Cup semi-final, and there were obviously loads of us in the audience who didn't want to know the score, and the guy just went, "So you all came here instead of watching the rugby?" And there was this sort of murmur in the audience. Then he went, "I believe England won," and it was really unique feeling of people sort of wanted to cheer but also wanted to kill him at the same time.
I'm sure I listened to Will and Ralph's podcast, Will Mellor and Ralph Little, and I'm sure I remember Will telling a story where he was doing a musical. I think it was Oh What a Night. I can't remember, but during I want to say it was the '99 European Cup final for Man United. And I'm sure he came on in a Man United top halfway through a show, completely irrelevant to anything, but I think he was that excited because he was watching it in his dressing room or something. So it's intriguing because I don't know. Callum, you might be able to say the same because I know you're a huge football fan. You sort of grow up almost conflicted because people who like theatre tend not to like sports so heavily. And Drew, I know you're the same. You're massively into your sport. And you almost feel a bit odd because you're part of two camps, so to speak. So to combine the two is quite an unusual thing. I'm sure it's not, but it just feels that way. Maybe
I was in Panto a few years ago and in Rickmansworth, and all the guys in the company were heavily into football. So between shows, there were on a Saturday, there was 2 screens going. So there was a football match there, and there was a football match, and it was divided. And we were just avid football watchers. The girls were popping out. Excuse me. Oh no, there's no point going there. So we had a big communal dressing room. Boys had a bit. We just had football matches running all the time. But do you remember? Yeah, and it is years ago. Remember when we famously beat Germany 5-1? I was in Chesterfield doing a production of Rope, and we missed the match. We missed most of the match, and the guy playing the butler would come on with a tray. And even if he wasn't in the scene, he would just walk across. And if there was one cup on, and then there was a cup of a different colour, or they've equalised, and then he kept coming on. And he walked across at one point with 5 cups and saucers, and just looked and went, "I don't believe it either, sir." And just walked off. And we were all it was just, and we were all like, 5-5. You can't believe it. Was brilliant.
Genius. Absolutely.
Just coming up with an extra cup on the tray just to tell us the score.
That's amazing.
Very clever way.
I mean, we had similar, didn't we? I'm sure we were doing football trivia and football quizzes and stuff in the dressing room during Panto, Callum, and I can't imagine that some of the guys in there who were certainly not football fans, they were particularly impressed that we were only ever focused on football in between shows.
Yeah, zero interest. We were like checking a football score and then walking on stage. But you're right, though. It does feel different. And I know I joke about sort of telling people the score, but actually I feel we're going to need to judge that by the audience, because kind of a lot of people will be coming to the theatre because they're kind of sick of the football. And it's very easy as a comedian to annoy people. Or maybe it's just me, but to annoy an audience quite quickly. And I wonder, like, if you then keep going on about it, a lot of people are like, oh, goodness sake, we came here because we're not interested in it. So yeah, it is an interesting dichotomy.
The further that competition goes on and further England go in the competition, the less and less dads and granddads are going to be and brothers are going to be in the audience. You look out, if we get anywhere near a final, you'll look out and just see, it's a all female audience. There's all the dads are at home,
box office will come in and say, there's been a real spike of COVID amongst our audiences.
So many people want refunds.
So many people. Yeah, it's extraordinary, isn't it?
Anyway, we've massively digressed, which we have a habit of doing. And actually, the irony to that is we're talking about perhaps audiences not being so interested at Panto if we're talking about football. We're spending a podcast about the industry, again talking about football, so we've probably kind of shot ourselves in the foot there. But anyway, back to yourself, Callum. The comedy side of what you do, obviously with the trio and other things you talked about, heavily sort of child comedy levels, the silliness, the slapstick, the sort of the Three Stooges, that kind of side of things.
Yeah.
Did that come about just from uni and from working well with mates? Do you have any particular inspirations in that area, or people that you've followed their careers or that you sort of modelled yourself on at all?
Yeah, I suppose the slapstick kind of thing came from university. So second year we did a module which was called Popular Performance, and it kind of, I think it still runs actually, like it specialises in different aspects of popular performance each year. And the year we did it, it was British variety. So like, and 20s, 30s, 40s variety theatre. So each week we would look at a different discipline. So singers, variety acts, front cloth comedians, and slapstick acts like Laurel and Hardy and that kind of thing. And the culmination of that module was that we had to put on a show. So everyone was doing a different discipline, and we dressed up the student theatre as though it was, the 1940s. And me and a couple of friends did this slapstick act. And I remember our lecturer afterwards, who is a professor of comedy.
Such a cool title.
It is the coolest title ever, yeah.
It is brilliant.
He came up to us and said, "That was really good, guys." And you go, "Oh yeah, thanks." And he went, "No, that was really good." And you're like, "Oh, okay." He was like, "You guys you've got chemistry, which I can't teach you. I can teach you, how to tell jokes and that sort of thing, but I can't teach that." So that's how we sort of carried on from there. So that was kind of a research in performance module. So then I was looking at all these old black and white comedians like your Chaplins and your Buster Keatons and, like you said, Three Stooges and Laurel and Hardy, and that's where I really sort of garnered that love. And then I'd always loved comedians, and I love all kinds of stand-up. I watch all stand-up comedians, but those kind of silly comedians and character comedians. So people like Harry Hill, Lee Evans, I suppose, was the first show that I saw that I went, oh my God, this is, what's this? This is incredible. And that's the same for a lot of comedians, but he was the first person to take stand-up, I suppose, into an arena rather than being sort of, back room of pubs. And I love the two Ronnies. Like Ronnie Barker is a huge influence on me, because again, that's similar to what we were talking about earlier, Drew. Like he was somebody who wasn't particularly comfortable as himself, but as soon as he put a character on, he was just hilarious. And just so subtle, and his writing is so clever. So I love that. And I just don't think you have to always look at the new thing to appreciate comedy. I think so much of the old stuff is just genius. And the essentials of writing comedy and the essentials of writing jokes have been the same for hundreds, thousands of years. It's just, how you make them relevant to a modern audience.
And I would say there's very little new in comedy. I mean, a good slapstick. There's only one way of falling over a banana skin, and we all know it's going to happen. A good knob gag is a good knob gag. A good, good bit. It's getting slapped around the face. Doesn't matter whether you get slapped around the face, in the 20s, 60s, the 2020s. It's still a slap. Nothing changes, but it is how the society that you're working to accept it, isn't it? I mean, there's a lot of victimless comedy now. People say, well, you can't have a victim. Well, I'm afraid there's always a victim, even if it's the comic themselves. There's always someone's gonna, someone's gonna sort of suffer a little bit. Are we? This is something I haven't asked a comic. There's this whole thing. I mean, John Cleese spoke about it recently, that political correctness and wokeism, whatever you do. Do you find that is affecting your comedy, or is it you don't even think about it? I don't even think about it personally, and I don't the sort of stuff that I do, and I don't. There's nothing in it to offend, but just occasionally you think, well, can I say that word these days? Can I refer to that? Is that anything that ever crops up when you're writing?
Not so much for me. I mean, it's a minefield, isn't it? I mean, for me personally, it's not it's not the comedy that I do. Like I still appreciate it. Like, one thing we were always taught when we studied comedy is you can't watch something and say that's not funny, because if someone's laughing, then it is funny. I think kind of cancel culture and that kind of thing, I think it's good to look at yourself and say, kind of, am I mocking? I always use the term, am I mocking race, or am I mocking racism? And I think and that applies to kind of ableism and everything. If you're mocking the people with the outrageous views, then you can still do that in a quite a subtle way. I think Mel Brooks, there was a famous quote from Mel Brooks, and he said about Blazing Saddles. And obviously in Blazing Saddles, there's a lot of quite racist language. And someone came up to him in the street and said, oh, we love what you say. We think it's all brilliant. And he turned around to this person and said, what you don't understand, mate, is that the joke is on you. And I think I've always tried to sort of bear that in mind. Because sometimes there is some comedy and I think, well, actually, that's not funny. That's just mocking someone. But yeah, there's all kind of, there's a way to go about it where you're kind of making yourself the joke. If you're going to be a shock comedian, then it's, the fact that I'm saying this and the fact that these views exist is in itself ridiculous.
It's funny. I mean, I can't, somebody said it and I cannot remember the comedian say, never mock someone, or never get a laugh out of someone if they can't fight back. If they can put up a good argument and they can fight back, and they, then they're a not target, but they're a reasonable subject for humor. But if they can't, or if they're up against it, that's not a subject for humor. You don't have to, ignore it, but, go elsewhere for your laugh. So it's valid. It was just something, because you do write, and you are a master in comedy. It's worth, and I'm not taking the mickey, it's worth asking, because it's an argument and a sentiment that's shown its head more and more recently. So not something I particularly want to acknowledge, but it is a state of times, I suppose, we live in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that there's people that go too far either way. There's people that say, oh, you can't joke about anything. But there's also people that say, I can joke about anything. And my advice to people who perhaps don't find something funny, I think Ricky Gervais always says, don't follow me on Twitter if you don't want to see my jokes. And that's fine. You don't have to engage with these people if you don't want to. Yeah. It doesn't prevent the fact that they've got an audience. So I think what's the analogy he uses? He says it's the equivalent of going up to a parish notice board and taking down a leaflet that says guitar lessons and going, but I don't want guitar lessons. So you don't have to engage. You don't have to. Yeah, I like that. Yeah,
and that's what surprises me, that inevitably you'll see things pop up on social media of an audience member getting outraged at a comedian, and arguing, and not even heckling, like deliberately trying to disrupt. And you think, Now, if you've gone along to like an open mic night, then perhaps there will be people pop up that you weren't prepared for, and that's sort of semi-understandable. But if you've paid money to go and see a particular comedian, a particular act who has a style, you cannot then be shocked that they do what you know they do. And that's what's always surprised me or made me feel like I don't understand. Like, absolutely, it's your right to not enjoy something or to not agree with someone's views or what they're saying, but you cannot go and say, for example, and he's been in the news quite a lot recently for various things, Jimmy Carr. You cannot buy a ticket to a Jimmy Carr gig, go along, and then be offended that he said something offensive. That's what he does. He says that he is a shock jock. He uses that as a method, and a lot of people find him hilarious. And a lot of those people may be the subject of one of his jokes at one point, or maybe connected in some way, but then the rest of his comedy, they won't be. And they know that it's almost, I think it was South Park, the creators of South Park have always been very vocal about the fact that, yes, they are offensive, but they're offensive to everyone, like no stone unturned. Like, they don't just pick out 3 or 4 different areas and go, we're going to be rude about that, and that. They go, that's it. Like, everything is fair game. So if you're going to
very inclusive, actually.
Yeah, they're massively inclusive. But anyway, enough sort of back and forth about that. Callum, mate, I mean, we get to see each other fairly regularly, which is great. So it's always lovely to catch up. But thank you so much for coming back on the show. It's been an absolute honour.
It's great, mate. Thank you.
Give you the outlet to speak properly rather than just asking you about what's going on at Panto at that particular time. And I know you're a fairly avid listener of the show, which we much appreciate. In turn, which means you know what's coming next. We always like to end the show with a random anecdote or story or something a bit unusual that we can leave our audience with. Your career has spanned so many different areas and you've done so many weird and wonderful things. I'm sure you must have a cracking story that you can tell us to finish up.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about this. Obviously, there's plenty, but I thought the one I'd quickly tell you is the time I set up for a show. We've been booked for a show, and no one came. That was yeah, no one came.
No.
So it was a rural touring gig, and we turned up at this weird little village hall, and the chat was very odd, and it was down in the West Country, and we were like, "Have you had many bookings?" And he went, "No." Oh, okay. Do you think people will come? He's like, "You could have Daniel O'Donnell here and nobody would book." And I was like, okay. And so we spent 2 hours setting up our set, putting all the props out. And then we stood backstage, and it was at that point one of us went, "I don't think anyone's coming." And stood there, 5 minutes went past, 10 minutes went past. They set up the raffle. They drew the raffle. I won because I'm the only one who bought a ticket. Why'd they draw it? So I still left with something. And then, yeah, it got to sort of 10 past the hour, and we were just sort of stood awkwardly behind our set, and we were like, one of us has got to go and speak to him. We went out and we sort of said, "So do you think anyone's going to come?" And the guys went, "No." I went, "Okay, so should we just probably clear off then?" And he was like, "Yeah." So we just took down the set, put it in the van, and we left. And it's great because actually I've always said to the other guys now, like, if ever any of us gets big, we will always have that to bring us back down to earth. The time that we stood behind our set in West Buckland Village Hall and nobody wanted to see our show.
Oh, mate, brilliant.
Absolutely amazing. That's incredible. And what a way to end. I mean, so you've gone from no audience at all to the greatest audience there is, the Drewling Samantics audience, to tell your story. I mean, exactly.
Yeah. So if any of you are listening in West Buckland,
you missed out.
Please support that village hall in future.
Well, yeah, that as well. But
even if David O'Donnell is performing, please book.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
And buy a raffle ticket. Buy a raffle
ticket.
ticket.
That as well. Buy a raffle ticket, because there's every chance there'll be no competition. Like
it was a particularly good Tesco's own Victoria sponge that I won as well. So
wow.
Well worth it.
So you drove all that way, set everything up, and you came away with something that you could have gone around the corner and bought for £3. I mean, it all makes sense.
There we go. The dream. That's
It's not the winning. It's not the winning. It's the taking part. That's what it is.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you were the only one that took part. So brilliant.
The other two didn't even buy tickets. Can you believe it? That's like you're guaranteed a win.
No.
But that's what happens when you're on the big money, Callum. You know, you have to make those big gestures.
Well,
you know what I mean?
You're quite right.
You got to do it. You got to take a lead, haven't you, mate? You know,
chucking those dollars about.
That's
Callum, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on. I mean, I will be seeing you very soon for some work anyway, but thank you so much for joining us again on the podcast. I hope you've enjoyed the opportunity to talk about things that haven't just been panto, as we subjected you to last time. But thank you so much, and everything you've got coming up. I know there's lots of stuff in the pipeline, so all the best for all of that. And thank you again. Looking forward to seeing you soon, mate.
Thanks ever so much, Callum. We'll see you soon.
Good work.
See you later.
Yeah.
Cheers, mate. Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. Sam, what a great chat and what a great guest to have. Our first guest of season 6, Mr. Callum Donnelly. A lovely chat. Really enjoyed that.
He's a brilliant guy. I mean, I can say personally, having worked with him, that it's a nightmare being on stage trying to keep a straight face, because he is so incredibly funny, so quick-witted, and just he's always thinking one step ahead. He's like a funny chess player almost. But he's just a really brilliant guy, and also wonderful to hear about his involvement in all these things out in the community and bringing theatre and performance to those that perhaps don't have it easily accessible as some of us might do. Just a really wonderful guest to be the first of season 6.
I think you're right, Sam. I mean, he studied his craft. He's got a qualification for his craft, and he's willing to risk that, as you say, and take it out into the wider world. I mean, as we all know, there is a huge audience out there, except for that one night when there wasn't. What a lovely story.
Yeah, that one's story. Sort of to one side. There are lots of people out there that do want to see people like Callum performing, and just everything that all of us as performers have got to offer. Just a superb first guest of season 6. I'm so glad he was able to join us again. I mean, he's set the standard high, mate, for those coming in the future.
Yeah, very high bar set by Mr. Callum Donnelly, but great to meet him. Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, and talking of what's coming up, Sam, I know you alluded a little bit to what you've got coming up soon. Have you got a busy week? Can you talk about that anymore? Yeah, no, I've got some filming coming up, so that's really exciting, and a couple of self-tapes and things like that. But a few bits, are you similar sort of thing? Yeah, I'm going to start line learning, so that's always a little bit of a. I don't know about you, but I always sort of go, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it, and eventually I've got to do it now. So I've got to start doing that. So that's my next plan. Start learning the lines. But we can talk more when we meet together next week, mate. Well, yeah, absolutely. We will bring some brand new content. We'll have a look at what's going on in our performer lives and in the wider world of the industry next week. Yeah. And we'll also look forward to lots more exciting guests this season as well. But next week, just you and me. How about that? All right, mate. I'll tell you what. I'll drink to that. Cheers. Cheers, mate. See everyone next time. Bye. Thanks again for watching this episode of Drewling Samantics. Please make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. Don't forget, we're also available as audio only. Just search Drewling Samantics in any good podcast app. And please support us on social media. All our links and handles are on screen now. We love welcoming new followers and subscribers, so why not share with your family and friends so they can join in too. Thanks very much. See you next time.